Hey everybody, welcome to another Hiatus vlog. Before I talk about the things I'm going to talk about today, I just want to say a big heartfelt thank you for all of the comments and the feedback that I got on the first one. I really appreciate it, and it felt good personally, and in kind of a selfish way directed towards me. I really appreciated that and absorbed that, and then kind of stepping outside of myself, it really made me appreciate all you all in a certain way that I kind of have a feeling that there's sort of a general good feeling that sort of is coming out of this situation where people seem to be kind of stepping up a little bit, being a little bit more conscientious, a little bit more deliberative in, how they treat others. And, just seeing you folks take the time to comment and say that sort of reaffirms what I'm kind of seeing out in general public, at least where I live, and some of the stuff that I've seen online as well. So that's a very good kind of silver lining to some of this, what's going on. And that's kind of the general topic that I want to talk about today, is the kind of that general sort of, unearthing and lifting up, think of like a crane kind of lifting into the mud and pulling out, a pearl or something, that kind of idea. And before I talk about the kind of the gaming side this time, I want to kind of put the other stuff on the front end. And one thing that I just wanted to sort of kind of re-stress, for folks, because I talked a little bit last time about how I had, some heaviness and a little bit of a burden kind of feeling. I think a lot of people are feeling that. I don't know anybody that has caught the virus or anything. I know some people that should definitely not catch it, because they're have immunoproblems and asthma and stuff like that. And, they need to be as far away as from the virus as possible. But that heaviness, I think everybody feels in general, even though you might not be directly affected. And the lifting of that heaviness that I sort of spoke about last week. And so the one thing that I've found that I see it in everybody else, and I see it kind of even in myself, is like a real forceful, like, push, just that little like inch, just that last, you talk football terms, right? You get that last 1 inch across the goal line. And if you could do something just like a little extra nice, it helps you in a way. And so I put some links here to some charities. First one is cdcfoundation.org. The next one is Second Harvest. That's a local charity. There's another one called City Harvest. Now, you don't have to give to charity because not everybody's got the money to do that. You can do little things as well. But it's just such a cliche thing to say. But I really want to just say it because I think the more it gets said, the better. And if you can just kind of do something a little bit nice, like, smile for somebody, wave, greet as you walk, because the weather's been kind of gloomy here the last couple days, but it was a little sunny. And we'd keep our social distance in the neighborhood. There's a park kind of a couple blocks up. We'd walk our dog there, everybody keeping their space. And people are generally nice, when you're on a walk, at least around here. But there was just that extra level of niceness and this that extra little push kind of against the darkness, if you will. That little, like, little punch of light. And that just, it immediately gets like reflected back to you. That's what I feel. So I put some charities up there that I've been not involved, but I gave some money to, right? So the CDC Foundation, the first one, it's going to help supplies and logistics and all that kind of stuff for a lot of the healthcare that's going on. The second one, Second Harvest, is a local one here for a food bank. And, I know there's food banks around where everybody's at, and the food banks are very, very important at this time. So I wanted to stress that. And the third one is City Harvest, and that's specifically for New York City. And so I think New York's being especially hit hard right now, and so I think that's an important one to contribute to. But money is not everything, and there's two things that I want to sort of just as an anecdote relate to you. And the first one is I was going to get lunch a week or 2 weeks ago maybe, and I was in line at Wendy's, and we were already pretty locked down here, and I was getting a fast food for lunch. And there was a guy in front of me, but he wasn't in a car. He was standing there. And I immediately knew he was a trucker. And because my wife and I talked about it, I think the day before, where a trucker had gone through, and the restaurants had been shut down, so they couldn't go in, and so they were trying to stand in line in the drive-through to get, you know, their lunch or whatever. And they said, well, we're not serving you or whatever. And, you know, this story kind of got a life of its own. And me and my wife were sort of like, you know, we got pretty irritated by it. And so, you know, serendipitously, I'm behind this guy and he's standing there. And I said, you know what? When I pulled up to the speaker, I said, that guy, whatever he gets, I'm paying for. Because the healthcare workers, they need our help. Lots of people aren't needing our help. The truckers are delivering food, they're delivering supplies, they're delivering all kinds of stuff. They're on the road, they're out there in the environment. Everybody else is being told to lock down, but they're also delivering the shipping and all that kind of stuff. Is, you know, it's economy, right? But it's like it's life, you know, it's like a bloodstream, which kind of is what the economy is sometimes. Yeah, so just that little like thing, and he just got like a little meal or whatever. Again, it's money, but again, it's just little things like that. If you can kind of try to find that, and I felt really good. Like, it's a strange thing. Like, I was like very sort of, I don't want to call it prideful, but at that moment I was like, that guy was super grateful. Like, you could tell he was very like, you know, thank you. And then he just took off, and got back into his big rig, wherever it was. And, you know, it just made me feel really good, and it made him feel good, and it made us feel good, and it made us feel like, you know, like, hey, we're gonna get through this. That kind of just that extra push, because there's just so much darkness, you know, that's out there. So that was just one other kind of thing I wanted to relate to that and just kind of push off on that. And then sort of one little thing, it just came out today, which is sort of serendipitous in its own, is John Krasinski, who used to be on The Office, and he directed and wrote and starred in A Quiet Place and all this stuff. He started a new YouTube channel about just good news, only good news. So I'll put a link to that. I think it's been blowing up everywhere, so you've probably seen it, but I'll put a link to that. It's really great, lots of humor, and just an overall general warm, good feeling, and just a great friggin' idea as well. The other things, so game stuff I wanted to talk about was the designer Frostgrave and Osprey Games, the publisher, have gotten together and they've released the rules for Frostgrave in a ebook format, as well as some of the solo scenarios for free. And I'll put links to that below. And I mentioned it on my Facebook page. And I love Frostgrave. I think it's my number two or three game of all time. And it's really great. I've done reviews of it and stuff like that. Go watch, there's a bunch of other YouTube videos on that. But that's a really, really cool thing. And then the other thing is interesting is I've seen a lot of people start to pick up massively multiplayer online gaming again, because, you know, it's a good way to waste time, and you can get the Guild Wars 2 game, which it's an MMO, massively multiplayer game, without any monthly fee, and you can get the base game plus the 2 or 3 expansions all included one for $12. And I'll put a link to that on cdkeys.com. And that's a great deal. And then you don't have to worry about paying a monthly fee, and there's just tons of content to waste your quarantine time on. So that's cool. And then the last thing I want to talk about is what I kind of talked about last week, was the online gaming stuff. And that's been obviously really huge. Like, Board Game Arena is like, it gets to peak capacity, and it's, you know, you can't log in unless you have a premium account, which I, you know, promptly activated. But yeah, it was 18,000 something users at once. And I noticed that Vassal's server count or whatever was like, it hit its highest number and all this stuff. I've really found through the little bit of playing around that I've done is those places like Board Game Arena, Yucatan, Boisjeu, and all that stuff is, I think I mentioned last week, but that's really what I prefer versus like a tabletop simulator or Tabletopia. But my group's really been into all of this too. Now, some of them have sat together and played on Tabletopia versus Tabletop Simulator and the other things. Because a lot of people are like me, they're the opposite. They don't want to do the async. They want to do the real time. And I think the sort of general vibe I found is that most people in my group seem to prefer Tabletopia, but they almost lean towards doing these async platforms that have like the game rules engines driven, like a Yucatan or Board Game Arena, but playing that over Discord or like Skype or Zoom or whatever. But doing that seems to be like the best experience, where you still have the real-time aspects and the chatting and all that kind of stuff, but having the game engine kind of driven by and handled, so you don't have to deal with the physics of all the card pieces and everything. But that's pretty much all I want to talk about this week. A little bit, I know, a little preachy kind of thing, but I just really want to stress, because the news is like getting darker in some ways, and the way that I found for me to fight against that is to keep myself busy and to kind of do these little tiny jabs of light, you know, at it, and trying to bend my mind in a way that it's hard, because you want to stay informed, you want to stay vigilant, you want to stay all this stuff, but you don't want to get you don't want to get consumed by it. So it is real tricky to balance. One last thing though is since the weather's been crappy, we haven't been doing our walks and things, and our gym's closed, so we haven't been working out. So I'm going to put a couple of links to a couple of videos by these fellows. I believe they're from Thailand, and they do these like real 10, 20, 30-minute workouts that you can do just like in your bedroom, like really small space. But man, they're a really good workout. So I'm going to throw those links down there as kind of a bonus, because like staying fit is another kind of, it's an internal small punch, right? To keep your body energy level. Like I talked about, the economy is like the bloodstream sometimes. If the economy is working and it's good, you know, it's a good bloodstream. So if you can get your body working good, your mind will feel better and that kind of stuff. Especially because it sucks right now, because we like to get out in the sun and we can't. And you can't go anywhere. You can't go walk around the mall or whatever because of everything. So having that little like synergistic energy, my wife and I have been doing these workouts together, and it's been really good, and we look forward to it. And it's a bonding experience for us as well. Okay, so that's enough rambling. Take care of yourselves, please, and I will see you all soon one day in real life. Thanks.